Hey friends, welcome back to another video. Today I'm trying out the Crayola markers, the skin-based ones, that's the Colors of the World set that I swatched in my last video. I'm trying them out on 3 different surfaces from 3 different coloring books. This first one is Lacy Sunshine Gang Coloring Volume 19, which is Amazon KDP or Create Space paper. And I showed you the colors that I'm using. They're from the golden range. And I went down, I was pressing very lightly. And as you can see, it goes down quite nicely, but every time you've got to go over something, it leaves a streak. I felt that these are very juicy, and I found that they saturate the paper a lot. And I was thinking about this video after I'd finished the whole video and thinking that perhaps I should have left each layer to dry in between, which I didn't do. So I do like the tip at the end because you can get into quite small spaces without going over the lines. I always get a fright when I use a dark color, as it looks so very dark when you start, but when you've finished coloring a piece, then it all starts to make sense. But with this kind of blank page and just going onto the blank paper, you get quite frightened with the colors. So I'm doing this first layer quite carefully. I do like this Lacy Sunshine book. I think it's so cute. It's a Heather Valentin book, and I've had it for years and not really colored in it much, and all of a sudden I'm keen to do it. So I thought I'd try the flicking method to try not to get the kind of streaking, but it didn't really help at all. So at the end I found this kind of small circular method seemed to be the best way to get minimal streakiness. Can you see what I mean? It's not as bad as doing the straight lines because you're getting there while the little bits are still damp. There is still streaking. So we try that, and this was the palest color of the 3 I chose. I chose a light, medium, and dark color for the skin. I usually, when I color, try to choose a light, medium, and dark shade of a color. So this, being the way that they're labeled, was quite easy to choose. So that's finished, and it's still damp, and now I think I should have left it to dry, but I didn't. I did the hand quickly. I chose images that didn't have loads and loads of skin so that I could kind of get them done quite quickly. And now I go in with the medium color, and I'm trying to think of shadow lines. So next to your hairline, your hair creates a bit of a shadow. So this is not really outlining, it's putting in dark where there would be shadows. If this was a Copic or an alcohol marker, I sometimes find it works best to start with the darker color, but I'm doing this more in the way that I would with pencils, just to see how it works. The paper withstood the soaking remarkably, in my opinion. I was really quite surprised. So I tried to get into all those darker areas with this and tried to create the shadows there. It looks a bit like outlining, but the thought process behind it is different to outlining. If this was not a kind of chippy, big-eyed type picture, I would probably have taken a line down from one of the eyebrows as well to give a bit of shape to the nose, but that doesn't work with these chippy type things. I thought I'd give a bit of shadow under the eyes just to help them stand out. And again, just under the nose and under the lower lip. And then a bit at the bottom of the face. I really had fun doing this. I was once again listening to my audio book. I'd love to know what books you like reading. I also put a bit of shadow there on the hand. And then I go into the darkest of the three colors that I chose. And just went into as fine a line as I could right next to the hairline and in the very darkest shadow area. And again, I had not left it to dry in between, which I'm not sure if I should have or not. This went so quickly, I'm quite keen to possibly try another one, and this time leaving them to dry. That's the one thing with wet media, though. You do have to have patience and leave things to dry, so one possibly needs to have more than one image going at a time, because I get impatient leaving things to dry. And I don't have one of those dryers. I just have my hair dryer, but I didn't feel like using that. It's got quite a powerful hair dryer. When I use it with watercolors, it often sends the color all over the page, so I have to be really careful. It's interesting working with color and seeing how that dark sort of makes the eyes recede a bit. And I saw this little bit and thought I should go around that as well. And then I looked at it and decided it didn't look bad, but I decided to go over the whole face with the lightest image again, over the dark shadows and everything, to try and blend the whole lot together. And here I was very worried about damaging the paper and getting pilling. I actually didn't get pilling, which was, I thought, fairly miraculous. I was really pleased. And again, I used these little circular movements, which do seem to me to be the best. And looking at this now, I should have left some highlight areas, but I didn't. It's interesting doing voiceovers and watching the process carefully in real time like this, because I can see that I should have maybe left a little bit of highlight areas going down to the nose as well, and just on the cheeks. And of course, once this wet area dries, it gets lighter. So you can already see on the top where it's drying, it gets lighter. And even though this is a water-based marker, I still put a page underneath it to save the page beneath, because these are particularly thin papers. I'm busy designing a new coloring book, which will just be kind of cute pictures, I'm not sure, more children and easy adult coloring. And I was thinking of actually designing it with, of course, a blank at the back of the page, but possibly a page in between each page, so that you don't have to worry about putting in another page. I'd love to know in your comments what you think about that, and if you think that's something you like. And if you like the coloring books that have got black on the back, I prefer them with white on the back to the black on the back of it. So I think with this extra layer of the pale color again, it actually blended out all the streaks remarkably well for an inexpensive marker. I think that's quite amazing. I also, of course, I never know when to say stop, so I went over some of the shadows as well again, just to fill them in, because as you go over things, so it does dilute them. But now the page is getting fairly saturated and it's blending out into the little face. I'm fairly happy with this, and I'll share all of these images in watercolored this month. At the end of this month, you'll be able to see them. And then I just need to finish the hand. But unfortunately, in my brilliance, I managed to cut that off screen. So there, that's that on cheap paper. Excuse me, that's rude. I shouldn't call it cheap paper. Amazon paper. Next, I'm doing an image out of this book by artist Jennifer Stay from Colouring Pages Bliss. And it's a custom colouring book, so from their website you can choose which colours you want, and you also get a choice of paper that you want it to be printed on. I think it's really great, especially if you live in the United States. It was very expensive for me because of mailing, which is not their fault. It's my problem because I live in South Africa. But if you live in the United States, I think it's very worthwhile. And I had this particular book printed in what is called multimedia paper, so it should stand up to the wet media quite well, and it'll be interesting to see. So I didn't actually mean you can choose what colors you want. I meant you can choose which coloring pages you want. This page says some see a weed, some see a wish. It doesn't say some see weed to smoke. Makes me think of Grace and Frankie, which I've been watching all the old seasons on Netflix. This paper is quite nice and thick, and so I was excited to see how it would work with these Colours of the World Crayola markers. Quite a cute little image, isn't she? I like this little girl. And on starting it, I was excited because it just went on so nicely and so smoothly. And in retrospect, I kind of wish I'd coloured it a bit more carefully with smaller circles, and it would have been smoother. But I carried on like this. I can't remember which colour I used, unfortunately. And my hand is never still enough. I'm doing a voiceover because I can't colour and talk at the same time. For me to see, it's something deep, something gold deep. Oops. Maybe you can see what it says. I can't see what it says. And so I do the little leggies as well. I love her outfit. Makes you think of Anne with an E. Didn't you just love that series? Oh, I loved the original Anne with Green Gables as well. Just some of my favorite movie watching or series watching. Watched that with my daughter when she was a teenager. And now I go in with the next darker color to do again the cast shadows, and it's not an outline, it's trying to do where cast shadows are. Unfortunately, all you can see is my old hand with its age spots because of where this is situated. I'm sorry, I really need to think about that when I'm filming. I should have left the page to dry because this going over with this actually made the paper start to pill a little bit, which is surprising because it's thicker paper. But these are very juicy markers, so my advice would be to leave your pages to dry in between. And again, I sort of tried to think of where the light would go. I think I should have left her calf without a dark bit, and then I go over the whole lot once again with the lighter color. You can see how the colors fade as they dry, and that unfortunately made the paper really pill a bit. I wish I had left it to dry. Retrospect and all that kind of thing. But that's what we got on this multimedia paper with these markers. So I'm really circling this paper to try and blend it all together, because it's funny, but the thinner paper blended better. The first layer of these on this thicker multimedia paper seemed great, but it doesn't want to blend, and I don't know enough about paper to actually understand why. And I then didn't do a third layer. But it's interesting when I feel along it, the paper is definitely pilled and it's all rough. So yeah, that wasn't my best choice for these. Next is an actual watercolor book. It's a beautiful book called Bloom, not Boom, Bloom by Rose Valerie Chua, C-H-U-A, and it's printed on Canson watercolor paper. So it's a really beautiful book. So I'm excited to see how the watercolor markers work on this. I'm so sorry that the video is wobbling away like this. It's every time I zoom in, I touch it, and I just use my mobile to video on, and then it's not a fixed thing that I've got it standing on. But I thought it would be nice if we were zoomed in. So now I'm using one of the rose colors, I think, on this one. It's the very pale one. No, this was actually one of the golden, or almond. It was the very palest almond. I did, and then I went over that in rose to get a more Caucasian look. But I first did a full cover of everything in the almond, very lightly, but just to cover the skin. And the artist has done lovely shading here as well, which helps you enormously when you're coloring. So I'm really excited to color this whole picture in. And I can't decide whether I should try and do the whole thing with watercolor markers and just see how it does, or if I'll really use my paints at the end of the day. I'll see how the spirit moves me as I'm working. There's not a lot of visible skin here, just a bit on her face, and I think there was an arm. Can't remember, actually. I'll see now. But that's that, and then I've got a pale rose, very light rose, and I do sort of in face shaping areas and where the cheek would be, and a bit of shading area. And I've got my little water brush, and then I moved the pigment with that. Because it's water-based, it actually moves very nicely, and so you're able to get a much more subtle blend with these. I think that they would work quite well if you scribbled on a hard surface like a ceramic plate or something and lifted the color with a water brush or a damp paintbrush or something as well. So I just wanted to add some pink to her, but not over the whole face, just to brighten it up a bit. And then blended that out. Funny how colors on screen change a little bit, because she looks slightly green on the screen and she doesn't look green in my daylight at home. But yeah, I really liked this. Of course, it's sort of the whole watercolor thing. And now we're going in with the darker color just to blend out some more of the shadows. Again, the cast shadows, and this worked nicely. It's much more, it sort of gives you a chance to do something because of the watercolor paper and the sizing on it. It sort of really allows you to make something a bit more artistic in your coloring. It's much more painterly. And of course, I suppose a bit more time consuming then, but satisfying. So I just used a bit of this as well to give shadows. Again, where the face is next to these flowers would be shaded. So I hope you've enjoyed this and seeing how these markers responded to the different types of paper, and I hope you found it helpful and maybe given you some ideas. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye now.